Sam Carrick comes up clutch to give the Rangers a dramatic 3-2 overtime victory over the New Jersey Devils. We're taking a victory lap and explaining why this was the best win of the season.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1222 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So I think we all owe it to ourselves to really just breathe this one in a little bit, raise your drink here or whatever you got to do. Just enjoy this victory because it has been a long time since the Rangers have had a feel-good win such as that. When you consider the opponent and what a good season the Devils are having, you consider the fact that it's a division rival, you consider the fact that the Rangers obviously had to rally, and just the amount of fight and stick-to-itiveness that the Rangers showed in this game, battling all the way. It's a 50-50 hockey game, could have gone either way. Rangers fans and Devils fans don't really agree on a whole lot. I think we know that by now. But I think that we all, Ranger fans, Devil fans, we all got to agree that this rivalry is back in full force. It's been a ton of fun to watch this over the last handful of seasons here. So many good players on each team. A lot of ups and downs for both of these franchises over the last handful of seasons. But when these two teams get together, they tend to bring out the best in each other. They tend to play some extraordinarily competitive hockey games. And in the case of tonight's game, the Rangers are the final team standing. They get the 3-2 win. I tweeted during this game, about like midway through the third period or so, give or take, that this would either be the most epic, most feel-good win of the season for the New York Rangers, and probably the most important win, by the way, or it would be probably the most agonizing loss. Because, the Rangers, they obviously played well in this game, and this is a far better brand of hockey than what we saw from them toward the end of 2024. But the bottom line, they had to win this game. At a certain point, moral victories just aren't good enough. At a certain point, getting to overtime and getting the 1 point, that's not good enough either. At a certain point, you got to start winning some of these games. You got to start feeling good about yourself if you're a member of this Ranger team. And they were able to, at long last do that in this game here. So that was obviously awesome to see. And we've got Sam Carrick, of all people, coming up clutch in the overtime period. I mentioned one of my tweets just a second ago. I also tweeted, it was after like kind of a scrum in front of the Devils net, Sam Carrick rules, just kind of a throwaway tweet. And then little did I know he was going to get the overtime winner a little bit later in the game. So one of the more prophetic tweets that I've ever sent. I mean, look, you do 1,200 and whatever episodes, you're bound to get a couple of things right every once in a while. So I'll take my victory lap there. But look, man, bottom line, Sam Carrick coming up huge for this Ranger team when they absolutely needed him to do it. The goal was one thing, but what an amazing play he made defensively here to set the whole thing up. You've got 3-on-3 overtime, which obviously lends itself to, speedier, skillful players, and they're going to pretty much have their way in overtime when their team has possession of the puck. And nobody's scarier, I don't think, maybe in the entire league right now, for the Rangers to be up against, for that player to have possession of the puck in an overtime period, 3-on-3, than Jack Hughes. We know that Jack Hughes tends to play some of his best hockey against the Rangers, but not on this night, not in this instance. Now, granted, he did score a goal in this game because, of course, he did. But what a play by Sam Carrick, standing up Jack Hughes here. Hughes is approaching the Ranger net. He's kind of at the blue line, moving toward the net. And Carrick's there. He gets in his way, chips the puck away from him. Riley Smith is able to pick it up. And then you've got a 2-on-1 developing going the other way. Smith is up the right side. Carrick is up the left side. Smith is able to slow things down at the very end, make the pass to his left to Carrick, and Carrick just bangs it home with a one-timer. Everybody goes crazy. The Rangers win 3-2 in overtime. That was only Carrick's third goal of the season, but it is worth pointing out, Sam Carrick scored the first goal of the NHL season for this year, or I guess technically last year, 2024. The Raiders went on a tear after that goal was scored. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen again, but we can all wish and hope and dream and keep our fingers crossed that history will indeed repeat itself after this latest Sam Carrick goal. For my money, the biggest goal that any player on this team has scored the entire season. Also, the first Ranger overtime win of the season as well. And it's crazy, and that's why hockey's so much fun. You had, in the overtime period, Rangers had a couple of chances to win it. Just some better saves by Markstrom, but you had Panarin breaking through the defense. He got a chance from the doorstep. He was denied. Mika Zibanejad got in behind the defense, and we thought maybe that was going to be his big moment where he's officially back. He did have an assist, so he's up to a 5-game point streak, which is nice to see. But you were thinking maybe Mika was going to come through clutch. No, that didn't happen. So the two, highest paid forwards, the two star players on this Rangers, the guys that are making the big bucks and the guys that are supposed to lead the way, they're not able to convert. Like I said, just better saves by Markstrom. I don't think Panarin or Mika did anything wrong here. Mika's maybe a little predictable on that breakaway anymore. But after those two did not score, Sam Carrick does, and he sends the Rangers home with a win. And like I said, just a fantastic victory in this game. The Garden was absolutely rocking. Great team win here as well. And as for Carrick, kind of more of a bigger picture look at him, I think he's done a heck of a job this year, man. Every now and then you'll see somebody on Twitter, and it's not that much. Certainly he hasn't come under fire the way other players on this team have, but you will see at times, somebody will say, oh, what does Sam Carrick even do here and this, that, and the other thing. Sam Carrick's a solid hockey player. You can't move him into the top 6. I don't think anybody would ever look to do that. But as a fourth liner, ideally, and maybe he could play the third line, in a pinch, but as a fourth liner, ideally, he's done a heck of a job. I think he is somebody that completely understands and knows his role and embraces his role. The one thing you could maybe say against Carrick this season is that he's taken too many penalties, but even in that aspect of his game, I feel like he's gotten that under control recently. In his last 12 games, Carrick, or maybe 13 now, because I don't know, it might not have been updated with this game with the Rangers here tonight. So actually, let me check that out real quick here. So bottom line, though, he has gotten the penalties under control. And I'm going to go ahead and look at the game logs here, courtesy of our very good friends at Hockey Reference. So yeah, it hasn't been updated. So that means that in Sam Carrick's last 13 games, he has gotten through 12 of them without taking a minor penalty. Now, granted, the one game that's the exception to that rule, he took 3 penalties in the same game. That was against Tampa Bay. But still, he's gotten that under control, and, that's come back to earth a little bit, and good on him. Maybe that's a conscious effort by him to, get that under wraps and not take so many penalties, especially the ones that you just don't need to take. But again, for a fourth-line center, that's what I keep going back to with Sam Carrick. He does his job. He's been very good on the penalty kill. He's been an absolute monster beast in the face-off circle. This guy on the face-off dot this season, 203 wins, 144 losses. That's a success rate of 58.5%. I should have checked the NHL leaderboard before I, hit record here, but whatever. That's got to be up pretty high near the top. There's nobody that really does 60% most seasons. High 50s, if you're in the high 50s, you've got a good chance of leading the league in that stat. So that's great to see as well. Those face-off wins can be so big. We know he's a physical player. He's a pest. He'll get in your face. If there's a post-whistle scrum, even during this recent, really bleak stretch of Ranger hockey where they just haven't been playing well, if there's a post-whistle scrum, very good chance that Sam Carrick is right in the middle of it. So that's good to see too. He does play with a little bit of an edge, and teams certainly need that. They need their bottom sixers, especially, to be able to bring that to the table. There was a play in this game, and this might also be why Carrick ended up on the ice in overtime. I'm going to explain a play that happened at the end of the third period, which maybe gave Laviolette the confidence to put him into the overtime period. But let me just say, first of all, I'll be honest, Sam Carrick would not have been my first choice to play in the overtime period, despite all the nice things I just said about him. I think there's certainly other guys I would have gone to first. Now, granted, this overtime started, and it just kept going and going and going. There were no play stoppages at all. We had the opening faceoff of overtime, and it kept going until the Rangers scored. So it was very, fast-paced here. And look, by this point, Laviolette had already gone to all the usual suspects. As far as the forwards are concerned, Trocheck was out there. Lafreniere was out there. Mika, Panarin, Riley Smith was on the ice at that point. So he had, I want to say, was Cooley out there? That I don't remember. I'll be honest. I would have to look that one up. But the bottom line, they had gone through a lot of their, leading offensive threats. So at a certain point, you got to go a little bit deeper onto the bench there, and Sam Carrick got a shift. But going back to what I was talking about just a second ago here, as far as, why Carrick might have gotten a nod, he had a couple of really nice plays at the end of regulation in this game. There was a portion of the third period, late in the third, maybe like 4 or 5 minutes ago, whatever it was, 4-on-4. There was a penalty on the Devils, and there was a penalty on the Rangers. We get 4-on-4 for a little bit more than a minute. But there's a play where, the Rangers they're hungry. They're looking for this go-ahead goal here. And you've got Cooley and Carrick both going hard to the net. Cooley's shot got blocked, but then it kind of fell out his skates, and he's trying to stuff it in. And then Carrick just goes barreling in there like a madman. He was tangled up with a Devils defender on the way there, but he's trying to stuff the puck home too. He makes some contact with Markstrom. Everybody gets up, the whistle, pushing and shoving the whole 9 yards. That's what he does, man. Carrick's always in the middle of this kind of stuff. So that was big. And then there was also a play at the very end of the third period where the Devils got the puck deep in the Rangers zone. And they weren't really in position to score, but look, it's an offensive zone possession with less than a minute to go. You're always going to be holding your breath a little bit if you're the team that, is back on defense here, which was the case here for the Rangers. And Carrick did a really nice job against Nico Hischier, who's obviously a dangerous player, won a 50-50 puck against him along the boards, and then was able to lift the puck into the air and out of the zone into the neutral zone, avoided the icing and all that too. So that was a nice play as well. So yeah, he made some plays down the stretch, and maybe Laviolette was rewarding him. Maybe Laviolette just kind of played a hunch there. And if that's the case, props to him for doing that. Laviolette's come under fire from a lot of Ranger fans. Even I've been kind of, not so sure about some of the things he's done recently. But hey, look, he went with Sam Carrick and it worked. You can't argue with the results. Again, it wouldn't have been my choice. And had that not worked, and if Carrick had been out there for the goal against in overtime, I'm sure a lot of people would have a lot to say about that, myself included. But bottom line, it worked, and the Rangers got what I think was one of their best wins of the season. And in fact, in just a second, going to explain why, a couple of reasons why I do think this was indeed the best game, the best victory, the most satisfying win that the Blue Shirts have gotten all season. We will get to that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That is FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers, just celebrating this awesome win with you guys here tonight. Big shout out to the everydayers for sticking with Ranger hockey throughout this entire season, sticking with this Ranger podcast throughout the entire season. For our next episode, Rangers are going to be in Vegas at 10 p.m. on Saturday. So that episode will have to wait until Sunday. I really don't think I'm going to push record at 1 a.m., but we will see. Never say never. But yeah, we'll have the next episode. We'll obviously cover whatever happens in that game. But as for this game, like I said, best win of the season. The Rangers, since the holiday break, have come out of said break, and they have gone 3-3-1. Not a spectacular mark by any stretch of the imagination. I think we can all agree on that. But I do think the one thing that these 7 games mostly have in common is that the effort has been significantly better, and the execution has gotten better as well. The Rangers actually look like a hockey team again, and you're starting to see flashes of what made this team so special last year. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves or anything like that, but the bottom line is they are clearly playing better. A lot of individual players have stepped up recently. We mentioned Mika not too long ago. He'll have a hiccup every now and then, and he'll have a moment where maybe in the defensive zone, you want him to stick his nose in there a little bit more than he does, but he is contributing offensively again. That's his bread and butter. He does have the 5-game point streak. That's just one example. The Panarin line, those guys are starting to look like their old selves. I mean, they're starting to produce offensively in a big way. And, Igor's back now too. So that's obviously very encouraging as well. But to get back to my original point here, again, 3-3-1 since the holiday break. Bottom line, it was awful watching this team play hockey for a stretch of, I would say, at least 6 weeks. I mean, you get the odd win every once in a while because, it's the NHL. You're going to win some games now and then. But from really the majority of November and really the majority of December, this was tough to watch. I mean, these guys were just skating in quicksand. Nobody looked like they wanted to be there. Everybody just seemed down and sad and just uncompetitive. And it was miserable to watch, but beyond that, part of the reason why it was so miserable to watch is because the Rangers themselves just looked miserable to be playing hockey. These guys actually look like they're having fun again. They got some spring in their step. They've hung in there. They've weathered the storm. And, things are starting to turn at least a little bit. But I will say this. I feel like this team right now is at something of a crossroads because the $1 million question here, what happens next? This is going to be, I think, a really important game in the Rangers season, regardless of whether they get back into it and ultimately make the playoffs or not. Because if they do make the playoffs, then I think a lot of us are very likely going to look back at this game and kind of like pinpoint it as, okay, that's the night where the Rangers really got back to being themselves. That's the night where they got back to playing New York Ranger hockey. And look, I know it's just one game. There's going to be people pointing that out to me in the YouTube comment section. I totally understand that. But the bottom line, I think even people that doubt this team, people that still want to see them sell this player or that player, and I'm open to trade ideas. I mean, this doesn't completely take those off the table. But I think even those people, you would have to agree, this is an outstanding game that the Rangers played here tonight, and one of the best hockey games that they have played the entire season. Just a lot of fun, and again, as far as this being a turning point, division rival, back and forth all the way through it, ups and downs throughout this game, electric MSG crowd, you get a comeback win against a team that has been very, very good in the third period. I know the Devils have basically, if they take a lead into the third period, which actually was not the case in this game, it was tied, but the Devils have been a dominant third period team. So for the Rangers to, come out the way they did in the third period, just flying, skating around like their heads are on fire, and playing a strong third period, getting the win, the overtime, I think that's very, very encouraging as well. So if the Rangers make the playoffs, this is your turning point right here. If they don't make the playoffs, we'll look back on this game and it'll just be that weird night where they just played really well and knocked off the Devils and had this dramatic win, but it didn't really amount to anything. So I think one way or another, we're going to distinctively remember this game when this season is over. And it's all going to depend on what the Rangers do from here. It's in their hands, and they're not, you know what? Let's go ahead. We're talking about kind of like big picture right now. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the standings. And granted, there are some games ongoing right now as I'm recording this. So between when I say this now and when you hear this episode, this might change ever so slightly. But let's see here. I do want to see where the Rangers stand in terms of the playoffs. They can't possibly be in. So, okay. So the Rangers are currently 4 points out of the last playoff spot that is currently held by the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Rangers do have a game in hand on Columbus. Now, granted, there's a whole boatload of teams just kind of bunched up there all around the same area in the standings, all around, 500 hockey teams. So there's a lot of work to be done here. But the bottom line is the Rangers absolutely are still within striking distance. So that's kind of the big picture here. I think another reason why this is such a satisfying win is because of how hard the Rangers had to work to get this and how willing they seem to be to put in the work and just keep going and keep battling. Again, we haven't seen a win like this in a very, very long time. We've seen them beat some good teams. They beat the Bruins 2-1 week ago, whatever it was. They beat the Stars 3-1 in December. Dallas is obviously a good team. But those were more the example of the Rangers goalieing their opponents, and it wasn't really like this epic performance and like this just blue-collar, just hard-nosed kind of an effort like this game was. This was awesome, man. This was about as fun as it gets as far as regular season wins are concerned. And I got to give a shout-out to Brian Boyle. He was between the benches for this game, and he said something between the first and second periods, right before the second period started, where I thought he just hit the nail on the head here. This is what he said. Rangers were way more connected in the first period. There wasn't one guy on an island up the ice, and I didn't get the whole quote, but that is such a simple observation, yet so true. It felt like the Rangers were in lockstep in this game. Everybody was laser focused and dial in. In recent games, as far as like structure and what kind of system they're playing, everybody's just kind of out there doing their own thing, and usually it doesn't really lead to success. In this game, again, it felt like everybody kind of came together, supported each other, and obviously the end result is the Rangers getting the job done here. The other thing I liked about this game, and this is a little bit of a catch-22, but there were a lot of sequences in this game where the Rangers had to kind of bend but not break. There were a lot of Devils possessions in the Ranger zone that went on and on and on. And you're really wanting them to get control of the puck, force a turnover, do anything, block a shot, anything that'll get the puck out of the Ranger zone. Because this happened a lot. There were a lot of times where the Devils were kind of cycling the puck in the Ranger zone. So the Rangers are struggling a little bit there. but they hung in there every single time. And it wasn't just a result of Igor making fantastic saves. He made some really good saves in this game, and we'll get to him in a little bit. But overall, the Rangers, again, they hung in there. They hung in there against some really talented players. They hung in there against a very aggressive forechecking team. There were times where it felt like the Rangers might get overwhelmed by the Devils' forecheck, and it never really happened. The Devils were effective on the forecheck, but the Rangers hung in there all the same. And the other thing I like about the Rangers' defensive zone play in this game is that very, very few mistakes. You didn't see any of those just mind-blowing turnovers and just unexplainable, just miscues and misfires and guys just being completely out of position and making passes that get intercepted, turning the puck over, putting their goalie in a difficult situation. You didn't really see too much of that. So yes, the Devils did have a lot of long offensive zone possessions, but the Rangers helped themselves out by battling, actually winning some 50-50 pucks. That was nice to see. And not making any mistakes, or at least making a heck of a lot fewer mistakes than we've seen them make in the defensive zone at other parts this season. So I think all that is very encouraging. It was very nerve-wracking as well, because you don't like being back on your heels in your own zone. But again, I think the theme of it was just the very simple fact that they hung in there, and you see the result. The Devils, this high-powered team. Granted, they've been slumping a little bit lately, but it's a high-powered team. You hold them to 2 goals on the night. Now, of course, this is the Rangers. So that means that they are going to need their goalie to bail them out at least a couple of times. And Igor was up to the task when that happened. Like I said, we will talk about him a little bit from here. But one more thing I'll say here, as far as like the big picture, because we mentioned that just a second ago. And I do want to talk about, where the Rangers are in the standings. We touched on that just a second ago. The thing that makes it kind of fun right now, and look, don't get me wrong, I would rather the Rangers be where they were last season, like at the top of the standings or near the top of the standings and pretty much locked into a playoff spot. But this is not going to lack for drama as we get into the second half of the season here. We've got the trade deadline now that is basically 2 months away, almost on the dot. It's slightly less than 2 months now. And the Rangers now have only a certain number of games to get things turned around, get back into a playoff spot, convince the front office that they don't need to blow this team up, that they want to push forward. We can debate whether that's the smart thing to do or not. But if you want the Rangers to make the playoffs, and I still do, regardless of what they do or do not do at the trade deadline, every one of these games is huge. There's got to be urgency every single game. And I'm starting to see signs, and I think a lot of you would agree with me, that this team is bringing a lot more urgency, and they are starting to recognize the gravity of where they are in the standings. And hopefully they're willing to fight their way out of it as they did on this night. Now, the trade deadline I mentioned is 2 months away, so it sounds like kind of a while, and in a way it is. But you got to remember something here. In February, the NHL season is going to pause for about 2 weeks there to do the Four Nations face-off, and that should be interesting in its own right. But what that means is there's fewer games between now and the trade deadline than there typically would be at this point in the NHL season. In the month of February, the Rangers only play 9 games, and then the trade deadline is a week into March 7th. So, yeah, they got to figure things out quickly, and all these games are big, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch it. You hope that they can continue to ride this wave here. That would obviously be nice to see. So, again, they look like the team that we saw last season, and hopefully there's more of that to come. We shall see. But in just a second, we're going to keep everything rolling. I want to shift our attention to Igor Shesterkin. He makes his big return to the lineup and posts a solid effort and obviously gets the win for the Rangers. We'll get to that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Gametime. We all love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert last summer, Smashing Pumpkins and Green Day. The energy and excitement were off the charts. Now Gametime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so that you do not have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It is game time. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up today's episode by talking about Igor Shesterkin making his return to the lineup. Obviously, a lot happened when, the franchise goalie is back in the lineup, has a strong game, back in the lineup for the first time in, a handful of games here, and takes us about 25 minutes to get to said goalie. But Igor was very good in this game, made the saves when he had to, stopped 21 of 23 shots. I thought he did a heck of a job in this game. He got better support in this game than what we've seen the Rangers typically giving to their goalies, because again, the Devils spent a lot of time in the Ranger offensive zone, but it felt like the Rangers hung in there, like I said, and at least, limited the amount of shots on goal that the Devils were able to get. But it was nice to see Igor come up big. He obviously helped the Rangers kill off all 4 Devils power plays, and they obviously needed all 4 of those kills. The Rangers, by the way, went 2 for 3 on the power play, so they won that battle as well. That's another thing that sounds like something that would have happened last year, special teams dominance by the Rangers. As far as the goals that he gave up, I mean, the first one by Hughes, Igor swept the puck around the boards, but he was kind of in a tough spot, and as Sam and Joe were putting out on the broadcast, I'm not so sure that anybody was communicating with Igor what he should have been doing on that play. But he sweeps it around the boards. Pallet intercepts it. To Pesci, the shot, the Hughes deflection. Not much you can do on a deflection like this. The Brack goal, maybe Igor would want this one back. It wouldn't call it a soft goal by any stretch of the imagination, but based on saves we've seen Igor make over the years, and even some of the saves that he made in this game, it's one that you think that maybe he would come up with. Kind of a weird play. We had a collision between Cooley and Hamilton in the neutral zone right around center ice, and then the Rangers are changing a little bit too, and Bratt faked inside on Schneider and then instead sped around to the outside of him and took the shot and was able to beat Igor clean. So again, nothing egregious there. It's just one of those things where, I think that Igor probably would have wanted that one back. I mean, goalies probably want every puck back that they get by them, but, a save that I think certainly he's capable of making. But then, we had some other big saves by Igor in this game as well. There was one near the end of regulation that was really big. This is the one that led to the 4-on-4 because the Rangers were on the power play, and this is not a good power play. I mentioned the Rangers going 2 for 3 on the night, and that's all well and good, but this last one here was kind of a mess. Mika had the puck stolen by Mercer. There's a breakaway. I mean, Igor, you talk about bailing out your teammates. See, this is what I was talking about with, Mika playing better, but maybe still having a hiccup or two every now and then. He gave away the puck on the power play. It results in a breakaway for Mercer, and Igor, gives him nothing, makes a save there. So Igor coming up big. And then right after this, again, while the Rangers are still on the power play, we've got Igor making a save on Bratt on the rush, and that's when Mika took a penalty for slashing. So we go to 4-on-4. That slashing call was ridiculous, by the way. If that was a slash, there's about 700 slashing penalties in every single hockey game, but they called it anyway. So we go, 4 for 4, or 4-on-4 rather. And Igor made one more big-time save here. There was a situation where the Devils were in to the Rangers zone. Igor's moving to his left, and the shot by Hamilton was sorted to Igor's right, so he had to kind of react quickly and just kind of flail out his arm, make the save there, got a piece of it, knocked it down to the ice, and then covered it. So Igor was making big saves all night. That's the bottom line, and didn't really get tested too much in the overtime, but just awesome to see the Rangers obviously get the win. And look, we've talked about a lot of the deficiencies that the Rangers have had this season. I think, though, one of the biggest ways that you can get out of this, at least in the short term, maybe not so much in the long term, and probably not for any kind of a lengthy playoff run, although I don't even want to mention a lengthy playoff run because I don't want us to get too far ahead of ourselves here. But the bottom line, short term, you can maybe goalie your way to some wins. And I wouldn't say that the Rangers did that in this game. Igor was very good, but so were the rest of the Rangers. But we've seen the Rangers have some issues with some things. Obviously, they struggle defensively. They've struggled in their own zone. They've struggled giving up rushes. The power play up until just recently has been a mess. Hopefully that's turned the corner as well. And obviously there have been some individual players that have had some tough seasons as well. Again, hopefully some of them are turning the corner as well. But one of the simplest ways you can make up for that, and maybe one of the most effective ways, is for your goalie to really have your back, maybe steal and win here and there, come up with some big-time saves. And essentially what Igor can do for the Rangers, if he's back and if he's, grade A Igor, if he's, elite Igor, like we all want him to be, he can pick up the Rangers. He can really kind of bail them out of some of their miscues, their mistakes, whatever you want to call it. Again, you don't want to see that become the norm because we've seen that in the past where the Rangers obviously over-rely on their goalies. But for the short term, and it's just kind of a way for the Rangers to kind of just, eke their way to some wins. I think Igor coming back and rounding into form and finding his A game, that's one of the best ways that the Rangers can do it. So look, Quick held it down while Igor was out. We saw Louis Domingue come in. He won a game too. Good for both of them. That's awesome. And Quick's going to continue to be an important player on this team going forward. I think both as a goalie and as a leader. But the bottom line, Igor's the guy. And they need the Rangers need Igor to be the guy if they're going to turn things around, full time here and move forward and start winning some games and start running at a clip that you need to win at to get back into this playoff chase here. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, good stuff from Igor in his return to the lineup. They will be at Vegas, like I said, on Saturday at 10 p.m. And really looking forward to that one. It's going to be another big test. I mentioned that the Rangers were going through a stretch. We took a look at the schedule not too long ago. And I talked about the Rangers going through a rough 4-game stretch here. And the 4 games here, home Dallas, home New Jersey, at Vegas, at Colorado. It's pretty tough stretch there, right? Well, so far, they lost in overtime to Dallas, and as infuriating as that game was, and it was, they did get the point for the overtime loss, and now they beat the Devils in overtime, so it's 3 points out of a possible 4. My goal for the Rangers going into this 4-game stretch here was just to go 2-2, just survive it. If they win one more of these games, and obviously they've done more than that, and that would be great to see. But then after that, it does get easier. You're at Utah, home Columbus, at Montreal, home Ottawa, home Philly. Those are all very winnable games, and that's when the Rangers can really make some headway. So go into that stretch with some momentum, go toe-to-toe with these really good teams now, and then take care of business against the teams that you should beat. Easy peasy, right? I mean, I just said it. All that has to happen now is the Rangers go out and do it, and then we're all feeling good about this team again. But great win, awesome win. It's been a tough season so far. Enjoy this one. Feel good about it. Feels awesome to see the Rangers get a win like this. It feels like I'm doing an episode from last season right now. And hopefully it feels that way for you guys as well. Both the episode and just the Ranger win in general. So, yep, we can call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, at @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's at @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time. Let's get another win.